What happens when a guest believes they can control a late-night talk show? You're about to see exactly how things unfold when someone decides they're above answering uncomfortable questions on live television. This is the story of how one interview turned awkward and then explosive within minutes, and why the host had no choice but to take an unprecedented step in late-night history. If you want to watch how this disaster plays out, make sure to subscribe and tell me in the comments what you think went too far. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was having what looked like a normal evening. The audience buzzed with excitement as they settled into their seats, unaware they were about to witness one of the most uncomfortable interviews in late-night television. Stephen Colbert, known for his sharp wit and skill in navigating tough conversations, prepared for what his producers told him would be a simple interview about recent projects and public appearances. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meghan Markle," he announced with his usual enthusiasm as the band played and the audience cheered. She walked out confidently, waving and smiling, then sat in the guest chair with the poise that comes from years of public life. "Thank you so much for having me, Stephen," she said, adjusting her seat and crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "I'm excited to be here." "Well, we're thrilled to have you," Colbert replied, looking through his note cards. "It's always fascinating to have someone who's gone from actress to duchess to whatever comes next." The comment was light, but her expression shifted slightly, a small tightening around the eyes that hinted she didn't appreciate the casual tone. "Yes, well, life certainly takes unexpected turns," she said with a laugh that didn't fully reach her eyes. "So, let's talk about your recent projects," Colbert continued, seemingly unaware of the change in mood. "You've been involved in several charitable initiatives, and there's been some controversy surrounding the funding and management of those organizations. Can you walk us through what actually happened?" The question was direct but fair, the kind any public figure should expect. But Meghan's reaction was immediate. Her posture stiffened, and her media-trained smile grew sharper, confidence covering discomfort. "Stephen, I think there's been a lot of misinformation spread about these projects," she replied, her tone slightly condescending. "And frankly, I'm not here to dignify baseless rumors. I'd rather focus on the positive impact we're making." Colbert didn't back down. "I understand that, but these aren't rumors. There have been documented reports from former employees and financial discrepancies reported by credible news sources. Surely, you can understand why people have questions." "I can understand why people have questions," she repeated, her words clipped. "But I don't think this is the appropriate forum to discuss internal business matters. I thought we'd be talking about more uplifting topics." The audience felt the shift in energy. Colbert glanced at his producer, who nodded for him to keep pressing. This was the kind of moment that grabs attention. "I know these are uncomfortable topics," Colbert said, staying professional but firm. "But being a public figure means addressing these concerns. Your organization received major donations from people who believed in your mission. Don't they deserve transparency?" "Stephen," she said, now with a clear edge, "I think you're being unfair. These are complex issues that can't be reduced to simple sound bites on a comedy show. Let's move on to something more constructive." The words, "comedy show," carried enough disdain to make it clear she didn't see the platform as a place for serious discussion, even though she had agreed to be there. Colbert raised his eyebrows, catching the insult. "This comedy show has tackled serious issues for years," he replied, controlled but firm. "And our audience is smart enough to understand complex situations when they're explained clearly. So why don't you try explaining it to them?" She shifted uncomfortably, her polished persona slipping for a moment. "I don't think I should have to justify every decision I make just to satisfy curiosity. Some matters are private. But when you accept public donations, they become public matters," Colbert countered. "People who contribute their money deserve to know how it's used." "Stephen, I'm going to stop you right there," she said, raising her hand in a dismissive gesture. "I didn't come here to be interrogated like I'm some kind of criminal. I came here to have a pleasant conversation about positive things happening in the world." The audience fell silent, sensing something serious was unfolding. Colbert looked directly at her, a flicker in his expression suggesting he was deciding how far to take this. "I understand these questions may make you uncomfortable," he said carefully, "but multiple news outlets have raised legitimate concerns. As someone who chooses to remain in the public eye and continues accepting public support, don't you think people deserve answers?" Her reply came fast. "What I think is that certain boundaries should be respected. I'm not going to sit here and be ambushed with hostile questions that have nothing to do with why I agreed to appear on your show." The word hostile lingered like a challenge. Colbert's professionalism remained, but his energy shifted. He was done tiptoeing. "I wouldn't call questions about public accountability hostile," he said, calm but edged. "But if you don't want to talk about that, then tell us, what did you expect to discuss when you agreed to come on?" She looked genuinely caught off guard, as though she'd expected full control without pushback. "I wanted to talk about the positive work we're doing, the people we're helping, the difference we're making in communities that need support." "That's great," Colbert replied, "and I'm sure the audience would love to hear it. But to understand positive impact, We also have to understand how the organization operates, how decisions are made, and how resources are allocated. These aren't gotcha questions. They're basic accountability. The tension was thick now, the interview heading into unfamiliar territory. Her face flushed, and she leaned forward, clearly preparing to take a stand. Stephen, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what this interview was supposed to be. I was told this would be a supportive platform to discuss meaningful work, not an interrogation. I'm sorry you feel that way, Colbert replied, steady as ever. But our audience deserves to hear from public figures who are willing to engage with legitimate questions about their work. That's not an interrogation. That's journalism. Journalism, she echoed, the scorn unmistakable. This is a late-night comedy show. Stephen, let's not pretend this is some serious news program. I've done interviews with real journalists, and they understand the difference between asking questions and being deliberately provocative. The insult was clear. Colbert's jaw tightened. The crowd held its breath. This wasn't banter, this was conflict. I see, Colbert said, voice controlled but edged with steel. So because this is a comedy show, I shouldn't ask serious questions. Interesting viewpoint on media responsibility. I'm saying there's a time and a place, she said, her voice rising. And ambushing someone with hostile questions about complex business matters on a comedy show is neither the time nor the place. But you knew you were coming on a talk show, he countered. Did you think we were just going to talk about the weather? These issues have been in the news for months. Any competent media team would have prepared you for these questions. Her expression darkened at the suggestion her team might be incompetent, and for a moment her composure cracked. My team is extremely competent, thank you. What they didn't prepare me for was this level of disrespect. Disrespect, Colbert repeated, eyebrows raised. I've been professional and asked straightforward questions about matters of public interest. If that feels disrespectful to you, perhaps the problem isn't the questions. She suddenly stood up, startling both the audience and Colbert. I don't need to sit here and be lectured about public responsibility by someone who makes jokes for a living. The audience gasped. She had insulted not only the host but late-night television itself, and everyone understood the weight of it. Colbert stayed seated, his expression shifting to something between shock and cold control. I see, he said quietly. So making jokes for a living disqualifies me from asking serious questions. Fascinating view of media's role. Realizing she had gone too far, she attempted to pull back, still seated, leaning forward. That's not what I meant, Stephen. I just think there are more appropriate venues for these discussions. Like where? Colbert asked, tone now sharp. Because from what I understand, you've been turning down interviews with traditional news outlets for months. So if not here, then where exactly should people go for answers to these questions? She opened her mouth to respond, then paused, leaning back with a calculating look. I think you're mischaracterizing my media availability, am I? Colbert asked, taking out a sheet of paper. Because I have a list of unanswered interview requests from major news organizations. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, the BBC. Are you saying all of these are fabricated? Her composure slipped further. For the first time, she looked genuinely flustered. Those are private communications, and I don't appreciate you bringing them up on television. They're not private when they're matters of public record, Colbert replied. And the fact that you've avoided accountability with serious news outlets but chose to appear on a comedy show suggests you expected an easier conversation, one you could control. That is an unfair characterization, she snapped, her voice rising. I came here in good faith for a civilized discussion about important issues. Instead, I'm being attacked and humiliated on national television. You're being asked questions, Colbert corrected firmly. If questions about your public work feel humiliating, that says more about your work than about my questions. The audience was silent, fully aware they were witnessing something unprecedented. This was no longer a talk show exchange, it was a confrontation. I think we need a commercial break, she said sharply, staring into the cameras as if she could direct the production. We don't take commercial breaks when you say so, Colbert replied, voice firm but controlled. This is my show. We'll continue until the conversation reaches its conclusion. Her eyes widened at the challenge. Excuse me? I think I have some say in when I need a moment to collect myself. You have the right to end the interview entirely if you choose, he said calmly. But you don't control how this show operates. If you want to leave, you're free to. If you stay, we continue. She was stunned that he called her bluff. For several long seconds, she weighed her options. The audience waited, breath held. I'm not leaving, she finally said, her voice tight with anger. But I want it on record that this is not what I agreed to. What exactly did you agree to? Colbert asked, leaning in. Because my understanding is that you agreed to a standard talk show interview. Did someone promise you you'd only get questions approved in advance? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, everyone understood she had expected some level of control. I expected basic courtesy and respect. And I believe I've been courteous, Colbert replied. I've asked legitimate questions about your public work. The fact you don't like them doesn't make them disrespectful. The fact you won't move on to topics I'm comfortable discussing shows a lack of basic interviewing skills. She shot back, frustration spilling over. The insult landed. Colbert's expression hardened. I see. So your idea of a good interview is one where the guest controls the discussion and avoids anything uncomfortable. Interesting definition of journalism. This isn't journalism, she said, voice dripping with disdain. This is gotcha television built for controversy and ratings. If asking about financial transparency and charitable work is gotcha television, Colbert replied, voice steady but cutting, then perhaps the issue isn't television. The moment hung in the air. A point of no return. She glared at him with open contempt, while he maintained professional composure despite the provocation. You know what, Stephen, she said, her tone patronizing. The real issue is that you're not equipped to handle an interview of this caliber. You're used to softball questions for celebrities promoting movies, not serious conversations with people doing meaningful work in the world. The audience inhaled sharply. She had questioned his competence and elevated herself above everything his show usually covered. Colbert's expression stayed controlled, but a dangerous glint appeared in his eyes. I see, he said slowly. So you're saying that years of interviewing presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize recipients, and influential thinkers somehow didn't prepare me to speak with you, he asked. That's quite an assessment of your own importance. I'm saying some topics require more nuance and sensitivity than others, she replied, missing the sarcasm in his tone. And clearly, this particular subject is beyond your skill set. My skill set? Colbert repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Let me demonstrate my skill set by asking you one more time. Can you explain to the people who donated to your organization why financial records show significant discrepancies between what was promised and what was delivered? I already told you I'm not going to dignify that line of questioning, she snapped. Frankly, I'm starting to wonder if this entire interview was set up as some kind of ambush. Did someone put you up to this? The paranoia in her voice was unmistakable. Put me up to what? Colbert asked, genuinely stunned. Doing my job, asking questions any journalist would ask. Nobody had to put me up to anything. These are basic accountability questions. Basic questions? She laughed bitterly. There's nothing basic about what you're doing. You're trying to destroy someone's reputation on national television and pretending it's journalism. I'm trying to get answers to legitimate questions, he replied firmly. If those questions threaten your reputation, perhaps the issue isn't the questions. She stood again, more aggressively this time, pointing directly at him. You know what? I don't have to sit here and be attacked by someone with an agenda. This interview is over. Actually, Colbert said, still seated, voice calm but authoritative. The interview is over when I say it's over. This is my show. These are my cameras. This is my audience. You're welcome to leave at any time, but you don't get to declare the interview over. The shift in power was immediate. She looked around, suddenly aware that she had no real control, here that her usual tactics were useless. Are you seriously trying to hold me here against my will? She demanded, voice rising. Nobody's holding you anywhere, he said calmly. You can walk out that door anytime you want, but if you stay, we continue this conversation. She looked toward the exit, then back at the cameras, calculating the optics. Walking out would seem like defeat. Staying meant facing the questions she refused to answer. This is harassment, she insisted, adopting a victimized tone. You're harassing me on national television because I won't play along with your gotcha journalism. I'm asking about your public work, he replied, his patience thinning. If you consider that harassment, maybe you shouldn't be doing public work. Don't you dare tell me what I should or shouldn't be doing, she exploded, her remaining composure breaking. You have no idea what I've sacrificed to make a difference in this world. And I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who does nothing but make jokes about other people's real work. The personal attack was so far beyond professional boundaries that even she realized she'd crossed a line. The audience sat in stunned silence. Colbert stood slowly, movements controlled. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried across the studio. You're right, he said. This interview is over. Not because you declared it, but because you've shown you're incapable of having a civil conversation about your public work. Excuse me, she said, uncertain now. You heard me, he replied, voice final. You've spent the last 20 minutes insulting me, my show, my audience, and the very idea that the media should hold anyone accountable. You've made it clear you think you're above answering questions about how you spend other people's money. You've been hostile and disrespectful from the moment I asked you to explain your actions. She stared at him, stunned. I think you're overreacting. I'm responding appropriately to someone who came on my show and treated everyone here with contempt, he said. You want to know what real harassment looks like? It's coming onto a show and repeatedly insisting the host and audience aren't worthy of interviewing you. That's not what I said, she protested. Though without conviction, that's exactly what you said, Colbert replied. Again and again, you've made it clear you believe this show, this audience, and this host are beneath you. So I'm going to do something I've never done before in 20 years of television. The audience leaned forward, sensing they were about to see something unprecedented. Even the crew seemed to hold their breath. "I'm asking you to leave," Colbert said clearly, "not because you refuse to answer my questions, but because of how you've chosen to behave while refusing. You've been disrespectful, condescending, and hostile, and I'm not going to subject my audience to any more of it." She stared at him, genuinely shocked, as if the idea of being told to leave had never once crossed her mind. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," he replied. "Security can escort you if necessary, but I'd prefer you walk out with whatever dignity you have left." For a long moment, she just stood there, looking between Colbert, the audience, and the cameras, almost waiting for someone to reveal that this was a joke. But nothing came. Reality finally caught up. "This is outrageous," she hissed, her voice trembling with fury. "You're going to regret this, Stephen. People will see what kind of person you really are." "I'm counting on it," he said calmly, "because what they'll see is someone who expects guests to show basic respect to the people who invited them here." She opened her mouth to argue again, then stopped. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the exit, her steps rigid with contained anger. The audience watched in stunned silence as she disappeared backstage. Colbert turned to the cameras, looking tired but resolute. "Well, folks, that's a first for this show. I want to apologize that you had to witness it, but I think it's important that public figures understand being in the public eye comes with certain responsibilities, including the responsibility to treat people with basic courtesy." He paused, meeting the lens directly. "We'll be right back after these messages. And when we return, we'll try to end this show on a more positive note." The cameras cut to commercial. The audience sat frozen, processing what had just unfolded. It was clear everyone understood they'd witnessed something historic, something people would talk about for years. The entitlement, the blatant disrespect toward the host and audience, the refusal to engage with simple, legitimate questions, and finally, the dramatic exit. It had created a perfect storm of live television drama. But more importantly, it exposed the true character of someone who believed the rules that apply to everyone else should never apply to her. What did you think of this unbelievable display? Have you ever seen a talk show guest behave this badly? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories from the world of entertainment. Which other celebrity meltdowns deserve a breakdown like this?